Most teenagers who danced on American Bandstand faded back into the anonymity of ordinary life. But Lou Solino's story defied that pattern. From the outside, he looked like many others in Studio B, a tall Philadelphia boy, often paired with Mary Ann Cuff, moving gracefully to the sounds of Chubby Checker or Paul Anka. Yet there was something different in the way he carried himself. His focus was sharper, his rhythm more deliberate, as if the cameras were not the end goal, but only the first step. While other regulars smiled broadly at the lens, Lou seemed to be rehearsing for a stage the television audience could not see. That quiet discipline would lead him far from Philadelphia, to the studios of Martha Graham, the ballet classes of the Joffrey, and eventually the international tours of the José Limón Dance Company. What began as an afternoon pastime on American television would transform into a lifelong career on the world stages. This is the journey of Lou Solino, from teen regular to global artist. Lou Solino was born in Philadelphia in 1941, a city alive with change. The years after World War II brought new suburbs, busy factories, and a growing population of immigrant families who added their traditions to the rhythm of the streets. Teenagers were beginning to claim an identity of their own, with cars, diners, and jukeboxes shaping a culture that belonged to them. For Lou, growing up in this environment meant balancing the modest expectations of family life with the irresistible pull of music drifting from every radio. At home, Lou's parents valued stability, but they recognized their son's love for movement. Evenings often found him practicing small steps across the living room floor, while the voices of Elvis Presley, Ricky Nelson, or Buddy Holly played from a record player. His friends remembered him as thoughtful, sometimes quiet, but transformed when music began. He was not simply swaying for fun. He studied how rhythm traveled through his body, repeating steps until they felt exact. Life for Lou was ordinary in many ways, attending school, walking familiar Philadelphia streets, and sharing neighborhood games with friends. Yet there were little signs of difference. His shoes wore down quickly from hours of practice, and when dances were held at community halls, Lou moved with a focus that set him apart. He was not chasing attention, he was chasing improvement. The family offered cautious support. His parents were proud to see his energy, but unsure of where it might lead. Still, they allowed him the freedom to explore, and that freedom was enough to plant seeds of ambition. Lou may not have known it then, but the discipline he carried as a boy would soon open doors few bandstand dancers ever walked through. That ordinary Philadelphia childhood, full of radios, record players, and neighborhood halls, was about to collide with something extraordinary, the national spotlight of American Bandstand. By the late 1950s, American Bandstand had become a national obsession. For Philadelphia teens, the idea of stepping into Studio B was as thrilling as meeting a movie star. Lou Solino first heard about the show from classmates who bragged about the crowds outside and the chance to appear on television. He was curious, though less excitable than many of his peers. Where others dreamed of the spotlight, Lou wanted to test himself against the music. The first time he joined the line on 46th and Market Street, the scene was overwhelming. Girls in full skirts and boys with carefully combed hair chatted excitedly, clutching 45s of Connie Francis or Frankie Avalon. The sound of rock and roll leaked through the studio walls, urging the crowd forward. Lou stood quietly, watching, absorbing. He wasn't nervous. He was measuring the moment. Inside, the studio was smaller than it looked on screen, but alive with energy. Lights burned hot, cameras swung overhead, and Dick Clark's calm voice cut through the noise. Lou stepped onto the floor as a record spun. At the hop, pounding with energy. His partner laughed, but Lou's movements were composed. He danced not for the camera, but for the rhythm itself, treating each step like practice for something greater. When the broadcast ended, Lou realized his life had shifted. The experience wasn't just exhilarating, it was clarifying. He had felt at home in the chaos, his focus intact under the glare of national television. What had begun as curiosity became commitment. Soon he returned again and again, until viewers began to recognize the tall, serious dancer whose quiet presence steadied the floor. That first entrance into Studio B was more than a teenager's adventure. It was the beginning of a path that would set Lou apart from nearly every other regular. Within months of his first appearance, Lou Solino had become a steady presence on American Bandstand. Unlike the regulars who thrived on playful smiles and camera tricks, Lou captured attention with composure. Tall and confident, he often danced with Marianne Cuff, their movements marked by a kind of elegance unusual for a program driven by teenage exuberance. To audiences watching at home, their partnership felt polished, almost professional. One broadcast in particular made Lou unforgettable. As Paul Anka's "Put Your Head on My Shoulder" filled Studio B, the camera lingered on Lou and Marianne. Their synchronized steps and steady rhythm contrasted with the bustling energy around them. Viewers wrote to the station praising their grace, and even Dick Clark mentioned their style on air. For teenagers across America, Lou became a new kind of role model. Proof that dance could be serious and artistic even in the midst of rock and roll frenzy. Lou's style distinguished him further. His clothing was neat, his posture erect, his gaze focused rather than flirtatious. While others leaned into the spontaneity of the moment, Lou seemed to treat every appearance as a rehearsal for something larger. This discipline gave him an aura of maturity. Boys tried to emulate his turns and girls admired his steadiness. He may not have been a teen idol like Bobby Rydell, but his presence resonated with those who valued artistry as much as fun. The recognition spread beyond television. Teen magazines occasionally featured Lou and Marianne, and fan clubs mentioned them as favorites. In Philadelphia, he began to be recognized on the street, proof that even the quieter figures on Bandstand had become part of the city's identity. Contest segments gave him further opportunity to shine. Whether the music quickened or slowed, Lou never lost balance. To producers, he was reliable. To audiences, he was magnetic in his restraint. But beneath this rising attention, Lou carried an inner conviction. While his peers reveled in fleeting fame, he viewed the bandstand years as a training ground. Each performance taught him how to manage nerves, adapt to unpredictable circumstances, and dance with precision under pressure. It was not about 15 minutes of television glory. It was about building a foundation for a life in dance. As the 1950s drew to a close, Lou Solino had become a symbol of bandstand's golden age. Yet what set him apart was not just his presence on the screen, but the direction his path would take. For Lou, the lights of Studio B were never the destination, they were only the beginning. On American Bandstand, partnerships were everything. While some came and went quickly, Lou Solino's pairing with Marianne Cuff gave the show one of its most quietly compelling duos. Their chemistry was not built on exaggerated smiles or playful antics, but on harmony and trust. When the music started, they seemed to move as one, fluid, unhurried, and assured. In a program designed for teenagers, their presence felt strikingly mature. Viewers across the country noticed. Letters written to the station spoke admiringly of the tall boy and the graceful girl, and fan clubs kept their names alongside those of singers like Frankie Avalon and Connie Francis. Whenever the camera scanned the floor during the stroll or the twist, it often paused on Lou and Marianne, as if the lens itself understood their appeal. They gave the audience not just a dance, but a picture of composure, something that lingered long after the music ended. Life behind the cameras, however, was less glamorous. Rules were strict. Dancers were expected to maintain a clean image, avoid movements that might draw criticism, and accept that everything was live and unrehearsed. Mistakes were inevitable, yet Lou handled them with the calm assurance that defined his style. When a partner slipped or the floor grew crowded, he adjusted instantly, smoothing the moment so it looked intentional. Fellow dancers remembered how reassuring it felt to share the floor with him. There were lighthearted moments, too. Stories spread of quick recoveries when a record skipped, of laughter during brief breaks, of Dick Clark joking with the regulars between segments. For Lou and Marianne, these moments offered a glimpse of normal teenage fun behind the discipline the cameras captured. Still, the pressure of competition was real. Dozens of couples fought for visibility, and fan clubs sometimes compared favorites like rivals. Yet Lou and Marianne rarely engaged in such rivalries. Their dancing did the talking, and their most memorable triumph came during a contest where their timing and precision outshone everyone else. The applause, both from fellow teens and the live audience, confirmed their reputation as one of Bandstand's standout couples. It was a high point that fans remembered for years. But even at that peak, Lou sensed something shifting within himself. While others saw Bandstand as the pinnacle, he was beginning to imagine life beyond the studio lights. Every contest, every camera angle, every fan letter was important, but to Lou, it all felt like preparation for a bigger stage. For Mary Ann, Bandstand would always be remembered as a defining chapter. For Lou, it was only the beginning of a far more ambitious journey. By 1959, Lou Solino's time on American Bandstand had reached its natural conclusion. Many of his peers drifted away, content to carry memories of television fame into their adult lives. Lou, however, faced a different choice. For him, Bandstand was never the end goal. It was a rehearsal space. His seriousness, once a curiosity among regulars, had become a sign of something deeper. He wanted to be a dancer, not just a teenager on TV. The change began when Lou enrolled at Hedgerow Drama School, where he encountered theater and movement training that expanded his horizons. Soon he left Philadelphia for New York City, determined to pursue professional dance. At the Martha Graham School, he learned the demanding vocabulary of contraction and release, while ballet classes at the Joffrey exposed him to the precision of classical technique. Under teachers like Alfredo Corvino, Zena Rahmet, and Maggie Black, Lou built a foundation few bandstand regulars could have imagined. The real breakthrough came in 1968 when he was invited to join the José Limón Dance Company. At first, it was only a short tour, but his discipline and talent quickly secured him a permanent place. What began as a 2-week contract grew into 11 years of international touring. Lou performed across the United States, Europe, the Soviet Union, and the Middle East, bringing to life works that demanded not only technical mastery, but dramatic presence. His most acclaimed role was Iago in the Moor's Pavane, Limon's interpretation of Shakespeare's Othello. Lou's performance captured the character's cunning and menace, a transformation that astonished audiences who once knew him only as a teenager on television. Sharing the stage with legendary figures such as Denmark's Erik Bruhn and collaborating with Ballet West, Lou proved he belonged among the finest artists of his generation. For his former bandstand peers, life had taken familiar paths: jobs, families, reunions. Lou's journey was radically different. He had turned a teenage pastime into a vocation, and his career validated the seriousness that once set him apart on Studio B's dance floor. What seemed like youthful intensity on television revealed itself as genuine artistic ambition. This turning point defined him. Leaving behind fan clubs and contests, Lou embraced the rigor of professional dance, carving out a career that few would have predicted. His path showed that the bright lights of television could be a doorway, not a destination. The boy who once spun through the chaos of bandstand was gone. In his place stood Lou Solino, an artist who had stepped fully into the world of dance, with the next act of his journey still waiting to unfold. When Lou Solino left the José Limón Dance Company in 1979, he had already spent more than a decade performing on some of the most respected stages in the world. For most former bandstand teens, that kind of transformation would have been unimaginable. Yet Lou's path was never about following the expected course. Instead of retreating into memory, he stepped into a new chapter that would expand his influence even further. During the early 1980s, Lou began working closely with New Zealand choreographer Paul Jenden. What started as a professional collaboration soon became a lasting partnership that shaped both their lives. Lou moved to Wellington, where he brought his international experience into a vibrant but smaller theater scene. He and Jenden created musicals that blended humor, wit, and dance, including Troy, Monarchy, Rome, and The Nero Show. Audiences responded warmly, and Lou, once remembered as a quiet bandstand regular, became an established figure on the New Zealand stage. Teaching soon became just as vital as performing. From 1987 to 1998, Lou served as the permanent modern tutor at the New Zealand School of Dance, one of the country's premier training grounds. He passed down the Humphrey Limón technique with precision, emphasizing breath, weight, and storytelling through movement. Former students recall his intensity, but also his generosity, an artist who wanted them to understand not just steps, but meaning. For many young dancers, his guidance was transformative, planting seeds that would carry them into their own careers. Lou's role as a guardian of modern dance history was equally important. He reconstructed the works of Doris, Humphrey, and José Limón with care, ensuring that their choreography lived on for future generations. Archival photographs and records of his work with Jenden are preserved in the National Library of New Zealand and Te Papa collections, securing his place in the cultural memory of his adopted home. The later years of his life brought both loss and reflection. After Paul Jenden's passing in 2013, Lou returned to the United States in 2014 to be closer to his family in New Jersey. Though no longer teaching or performing, his reputation remained strong on both sides of the Pacific. When he passed away in January 2022, tributes poured in from the Limón Company, from colleagues in New Zealand, and from former students who credited him with shaping their artistry. For Lou Solino, the dance never truly ended. From Philadelphia to New York, from Moscow to Wellington, his journey embodied what few imagined possible for a bandstand regular. His life after the cameras stopped rolling was not quieter. It was richer, deeper, and filled with purpose. Lou Solino's life stands as one of the rare exceptions in the long history of American Bandstand. While most regulars lived their moment under the lights and then returned quietly to ordinary lives, Lou transformed his beginnings into a career that spanned continents and decades. From the polished discipline that first caught the camera's eye in Studio B to his commanding portrayal of Iago on international stages, he proved that dance could be more than a teenage pastime. It could be a lifelong calling. His legacy endures in two powerful ways. For fans of bandstand, Lou remains a memory of elegance amid the exuberance of the late 1950s. For students and colleagues, he is remembered as a mentor who shared the Humphrey lemon technique with honesty and care, shaping generations in New Zealand and beyond. His story bridges worlds, the rock and roll afternoons of television youth culture and the rigorous artistry of modern dance. Were you one of those who watched him glide across the floor with Marianne Cuff? Do you remember the songs, the contests, the feeling of seeing teens like Lou represent a new generation on screen? What moments of Lou Solino's journey from Philadelphia to the world stage still echo for you today? If these memories touch your heart, stay with us on American Bandstand Memories. Subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next story of the dancers, the music, and the era that shaped a generation. Lou Solino's journey reminds us that sometimes a teenage step on television can lead to a lifetime of artistry.